Arthur's family, they broke the norm as soon as they walked in. Welcome, everyone. We are here because Rabbi Dr. Arthur Waskow, Harav Abraham Yitzhak Yishmael Yam Ben Hanoch Kohana Abu David B'Shoshana has returned his breath to the great breath of life. I will begin, as Arthur many times did, Shalom, Salam, Shanti, peace, invoking peace across religious lines. We are here to both mourn and to celebrate. Mourn the loss of our beloved Arthur and celebrate the fullness and power of a life fully lived. I'm Rabbi Mordechai Liebling, Arthur's friend and often his consigliere. And I first invite Rabbi Sean Zevin of Mishkan Shalom to welcome us.
Thank you, consigliere. Daniel, I'm noticing that Daniel?
Yes.
So just noticing, I don't know if this is on, if you want it on.
We're just going to do this.
Can you speak a little loud?
We're going to use this one.
So you missed the technical conversation about being able to speak loud, so thank you for support.
Take a moment, look around, people you recognize, people you might not. Some of these people have flown thousands of miles for you, dear Arthur, because there's no other place they want to be in this moment. Some of you have come from a block, some of you have honored the planet by actually walking here and carpooling. Thank you all. For as the trees breathe out what we breathe in, and we breathe out what the trees breathe in, so we breathe each other into life. Reb Arthur Waskow. One of the reasons this community is here to hold here today.
Thank you, Sean. So what Sean just invoked is perhaps the teaching that is closest to Arthur's heart. That the unpronounceable name of God, Yud-He Vav-He, is the sound of our breath. So to become present here in this moment and to honor Arthur, let's just take a moment to breathe. You have successfully arrived, parked, found your Zoom link. So now be here. Allow yourself to sit comfortably. Close your eyes if you like, and begin to notice your breath. As it comes in, it goes out. Breath is the name of God. Take that in as you breathe God's name in and out. The trees breathe in what we breathe out, and we breathe in what the trees breathe out. Our breath is the embodiment of our interdependence with the world around us. Breath is the connective tissue of the universe, or God's presence. Notice yourself breathing in. Notice yourself connecting with God. Breathe. Thank you, Arthur, for teaching us that. Arthur, of course, was a private as well as a public person. He was husband to Phyllis Berman, father to David and Shoshana, stepfather to Josh and Marissa, father long career as a creator and prophet of the Jewish renewal movement. They divorced and he later moved to Philadelphia in 1983 to teach at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, RRC, and to found the Shalom Center. A few years after, he married Phyllis Berman. And we will now hear from Phyllis.
On Sunday evening, October 12th, Arthur's 92nd birthday, both on the Gregorian calendar and on Hoshana Rabbah, the Jewish holiday at the end of Sukkot, on which he was born. At the book's launch, sponsored by the Shalom Center, of the 2 books Arthur had completed in the past 18 months. I read the first chapter from his activist memoir called Tales of the Spirit Rising and Sometimes Falling, called Growing into Myself. He wrote about 4 incidents in the 2nd grade, in high school, in college, and in graduate school, in which in the first 3 vignettes he had caved to adult pressures on what he felt to be true for himself, and how finally, in an incident in the first year of graduate school at the University of Wisconsin, in a seminar with his professor Howard Beale, he said something that made Dr. Beale look at him as a promising historian. That finally allowed Arthur to take himself seriously and listen to his own inner voice. Arthur did that, listening to his own inner voice for the rest of his life. And those are wonderful stories you know and probably will hear from other people. I've received hundreds of those stories in the last week and a half, many of which I've passed on to a collection for the entire family. It will take me a very long time to write back thanking people. But know that I've read many of them aloud to Arthur, and sent them except where someone asked me not to, on to the family collection. People have remembered books he's written, more than 2 dozen, actions and arrests he's organized and or participated in, more than 2 dozen, teachings he's given, and personal anecdotes that they say have changed their lives, their actions, their professional choices, their ability to be both spiritual and activist, their connection to holy text and midrash making as personal interpreters of biblical and prayer texts. Arthur lived much of his life in the public sphere for his family and intimate friends and me. He lived in the private sphere, not a prophet, even though he spoke with a prophetic voice. We saw him as human. Occasionally, that righteous anger that fueled his actions for uncompromising justice was used in personal relationships that were hurtful to the people he loved the most. Luckily, he had the time to ask for forgiveness. Every marriage, I believe, is a mixed marriage. Even when people are of the same gender, racial makeup, religion, ethnic background, or age. What makes it work is how partners work things out together. Arthur and I, coming into a second marriage in 1986, he at 53, I at 44, were individually drawn to similar worlds. We encountered each other at Kabbalah institutes, and were each deeply drawn to the Jewish renewal movement, ignited by the brilliance of Reb Arthur Waskow, the Zaidi, the grandpa of a worldwide movement, integrating a joyous Judaism with a familial connection to other spiritual practices and people, leaders, and to the modern world of feminism, activism, and ecological concern. Though the general world of our activities and friendships has made for a right and easy partnership, everyday things were more complicated. When it was time to arrange our spice cabinet, we couldn't agree on where to put our individual most used spices. So we compromised by alphabetizing them. When it was time to shower, we found that we both had different understandings of what it meant to open or close the shower curtains after. That became helpful for us to note how we each use language in different ways. Many of our disagreements have come from a linguistic misunderstanding. It is an important learning for us. When it was time to find a common kosher practice, we accepted together a commitment to free-range, organic, kosher poultry that recognized the rights of workers and our human appreciation for and commitment to the earth. Luckily, I was able to find two such companies that represented those values here on the East Coast. When we worked together as teachers or Seder makers, I planned and organized, and he was spontaneous and surprising. Somehow, most of the time, it worked fine. Recently, in the exhaustion and impatience of the most recent years of caregiving, I yelled at him about something. He asked me to stop yelling. I told him that my yelling was actually a really good thing. I was finally learning how to stand up for myself against Arthur's unbelievably good arguments and some of his most outrageous ideas and/or demands. He should be happy, I said, that I was growing into myself. We both laughed. Though Arthur was completely comfortable speaking to crowds of thousands and to conversations with world-famous people, one of the experiences that was most satisfying for him was the weekly Torah study sessions that preceded Shabbos morning services at Philadelphia's Pinay World, and after the onset of COVID on Zoom. And for at least 12 summers as a Torah teacher in residence at Eilat Chaim in Accord, New York, the Jewish Renewal Retreat Center started by our dear friends, Rabbis Jeff Roth and Joanna Katz. Arthur would choose a few sentences from the Parsha, that is the weekly Torah reading, specifically the ones that were translated into English by Everett Fox, or the Haftorah, the prophetic reading. And before the group looked at the text he'd chosen, Arthur would invite us in silence to take some time to note whether and how the words, the Kabbalah, the invocation, as I would call it, were meaningful in our lives. It was an invitation not to be scholars or share rabbinic commentaries, but to share ourselves as human beings. With his own amazing interpretation in English of the lessons before and after Torah study, what unfolded in our group, not only in person but also on Zoom, was intimate and profound. The group bonded quickly and was able to absorb new people. For many of us, that hour was itself our Shabbat prayer. We've heard a little bit about this, but I'm going to give you a drop the 1980s, in a class using Martin Buber's book, I Am Thou, Arthur invited his students at Swarthmore College to talk with, not about, Buber. And when they encountered in the reading the four-letter name for God, the Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, the Y-H, V or W-H, Arthur had a revelation. Those four letters are without vowels and are essentially unpronounceable. When trying to pronounce them, he and his students recognized that the sound was itself breath. Breath. Breath, he said, is the shared language of all life, human and other than human. The trees, bugs, birds, fish, all of it, breathing. He began to see the ecological crisis of our times as a crisis in God's name, calling for our letting go of the familiar Adonai, translated in most Jewish religious texts as my Lord, which he saw as hierarchical, and replacing it with something closer to the breath sound itself, the human exchange of carbon dioxide in our out-breath for the oxygen we need to live in our in-breath, with the green growth's opposite exchange, giving us oxygen and taking from us our carbon dioxide. That for him represented an interdependent, and Mordecai, you said it's an interdependent ecological worldview. He suggested that the two-word Hebrew, hallelujah, hallel in our liturgy, offers us the ancient name Yah for a modern understanding of what's needed to heal our society. Arthur himself and I with him have led an adventurous and very full life in the four Kabbalistic worlds of Jewish mysticism. The world of Sia, the physical, tangible reality of our everyday life. The world of Yetzirah, relationship with each other and our beloved families and friends who are like family. The world of Bria, intellect and creativity. And the world of Atzilut, those amazing, holy moments when we recognize we are just the right size, neither too small nor too big to fit into this wondrous, though imperfect universe. We have both grown more fully into ourselves with each other. As he and I have sung together as part of our bedtime ritual for this last year or more. All I ask of you is forever to remember me as one.
Thank you, Phyllis. Shona, would you come up?
So we'll sing these more than David, but the third word in and the third word from the end, we'll say Ya or Havaya. Is more
my dad spent his entire year in bed at age 8 with rheumatic fever, reading endlessly. When he went back to school for 4th grade, his teacher, Ms. Rifkin, this is a story he loved to tell actually, said, when she said the class was to begin a new subject, which she then spelled on the blackboard, History. Look at the word, she said. It's about a story. His story. But whose story? Man's story, she said. Of course, not quite what we might want her to say now. And she said, that story begins in Egypt on the Upper Nile. That was revelatory for my father, who had just spent a year reading stories with his mother while he convalesced, and whose father taught history in high school. My father was obsessed with story. As a reporter for his school newspaper, with his PhD in history, his fascination with and determination to create midrash, stories layered on stories. He saw life, experienced life, in a long arc of story. He was above all wrapped up, enveloped in story. I have vivid memories of his reading to my sister and me while we sat on his bed from The Wind in the Willows or the Arthur Ransom book, Swallows and Amazons, about a family of British children who mistakenly sailed out to sea. When we would search for the Chametz just before Pesach every year, he would hide some of it behind the books on the dining room bookcase and give us clues about which book it was behind. And of course, there was origins, always origins. The etymological dictionary that told you where each word in the English language came from, its own particular history. My father also saw so much of life in grand historical terms, not only looking backwards, but also forwards. I'm not sure how many here know about his love of science fiction literature and his extensive collection of science fiction magazines, a legacy he handed on to my sister much more than me, as I discovered recently when I found the stack of science fiction magazines in her house, a stack just like the one he had. He wanted to see the future, how history plays out, and he was deeply committed to imagining and bringing about Mashiach time. Indeed, he saw his own life in historical terms, as part of history. The commitment to fostering, building, creating, nurturing a new kind of Judaism for this era, for this moment in history, and one that could last into future eras. His Jewishness, his Judaism cannot be separated from his sense of justice in history, starting when the confluence of history in real time in 1968 became suddenly fused in his brain with the story of the Haggadah. And for him, using Yah as the name for God, focusing on the breath of life, on its liberatory spirit, was not just a momentary thing, but an historical necessity, something Judaism could not live without. But, and I can't be fair to his memory without saying this, story sometimes included other essential things. The tangible world sometimes receded in the face of story. He said to me once when I pressed him on why he didn't wash the tomatoes he was putting in a salad, that they were small in the greater scheme of what he could do in life. Sometimes, indeed, it felt that story and history and the historical call he felt overwhelmed his ability to see me and to see others. About a year ago, we stumbled on a way to understand together the challenges in our relationship, and of course it was through a story. We were discussing his namesake, Abraham Avinu, at the Akedah, the binding of Yitzchak. My dad mentioned his memory of me enacting Yitzchak during a children's midrashic role play many years ago. that I stumbled away, unable to see after not being sacrificed. Somewhat uncomfortably, my dad asked how that had felt. Somewhat uncomfortably, I said that it was the feeling of someone not being seen, that Abraham Avinu had experienced an historical calling, but wasn't able to really see his child, or at least not until the very last moment possible. My father absorbed what I had said, and then said that it sounded like it was about him. I said yes. We hugged. Even to the last moment, my father never saw his history, his story as closed, was always trying to grapple with the path behind and ahead. Dear Father, Avi Umori, your story in this life is closed, but it has opened up many stories to come. May you be bound up in the breath of all life.
Amen.
Thank you. Sean?
This is not in the script. I found a box of my grandmother Honey's handkerchiefs very recently, and I brought several of them with us today, so I'm crying for them. My father was never without a handkerchief. Soon after Dad entered hospice care, I told him a short version of these words, and I want to share an expanded version with you today. When Dad wrote the Freedom Seder, he included a low dayenu. This is not enough, alongside the traditional dayenu. I, however, created a personal Cain dayenu list for my father. If you had only recognized the importance of learning history in order to change the future, dayenu. If you had only brought Martin Luther King to talk with Democratic leaders at the 1964 DNC in an effort to seat the Mississippi Freedom Party delegation, dayenu. If you had only stood between the cops and demonstrators at the 1968 DNC, dayenu. If you had only written the Freedom Seder, transforming American Jewry's experience of Pesach and their commitment to liberating everyone from oppression, dayenu. If you had only used your privilege to support the rights of Black people, women, and queer folk, dayenu. If you put your body on the line in civil disobedience only once, let alone a couple dozen times, dayenu. If you had only shared your brilliant words and calls to action in books and emails, honestly, a few fewer emails, if you only transformed the way many people experience the name and presence of divinity by connecting us with sacred breath, dayenu. But those are the public ones. These are the personal. If you and Mom only instilled in us a belief that our values, rather than our personal interest, must drive our behavior, dayenu. If you and Mom only taught us that justice and peace are core values, dayenu. If you and Mom only brought us up in an urban neighborhood where we were not part of the majority, which taught us so much, dayenu. If you had only taught us the joy of seeking the etymology of words, which you enjoined us to do even in the final days of your life. Do you know where seltzer comes from? I do now. Dayenu. If you only brought us up in a joyous, creative Jewish world, helping us connect deeply to our Jewish identity, dayenu. If you had only raised me in community with amazing feminist leaders, some of whom are here and some of whom are I wanted less fear and anger and more compassion. I wanted more focus on our family and less on your public persona. In these past 2 decades, you worked hard to grow to meet these needs of mine. And I'm so grateful for your efforts. While our relationship wasn't perfect, whose is, we found ways to love each other, which were enough. I will not miss your abundant, multicolored, bolded, and capitalized emails. But I will miss your wordplay, your clear-eyed and prescient activism, your smile and laugh and whistle. I will miss your hugs, but I will lean into knowing that your love is still with me, and our relationship doesn't end while I live. Die, Gabriel. I love you.
Jesse? Jesse?
I've known Arthur since I was 9 years old. I met him as part of one of the many communities, institutions he founded. I swear every email that's come out over the past few days has said, Reb Arthur Waskow, founder of. So one of those was a chavurah in the Washington, D.C. area, the Bremen Cheder, which is where my family joined when I was 9, and I met Arthur and his family and Irene and went to school with Shoshana and camp. So I have been tasked with leading you all in a song that, God forbid Arthur should leave us without any instructions. Arthur asked that we sing this song at his funeral. The chorus of it, the refrain, is in your program. The website at the bottom should not be there, that's a mistake. So this is Arthur's slight reworking of the tune "There is a Tavern in the Town" to "There is a Torah in the Town." So this song, as you'll see, is really not so much about Torah as it is about saying goodbye. Or the Torah, perhaps, of saying goodbye. And leave it to Arthur to transmit this crucial Torah to us through an 18th century drinking song that, by the way, is a little bit melodically complex. Thank you, Arthur. And parts of which bear a striking resemblance to head, shoulders, knees, and toes. If you would care to join me on the there's little echoes and then there's a refrain, and the refrain is in your book. There is a Torah in the town, and there my true love sit them down, and drink and smoke as merry as can be, and sometimes think of me. Here's the chorus. Fare thee well, for I must leave thee. Do not let the party grieve thee. Oh, the time has come for you and I to part. Adieu, kind friends, adieu. Yes, adieu. I can no longer stay with you. Please let the party breathe thee. Oh, the time has come for you and I to part. Adieu, kind friends, adieu. Yes, adieu. Oh, I can no longer stay with you. Please hang my Torah on a weeping willow tree. And now and then please think of me. Oh, dig my grave both wide and deep. Put tombstones at my head and feet. And on my breast just carve a turtle dove to know and sing I die with love. Fare thee well, for I must leave thee. Do not let the party grieve thee. Oh, the time has come for you and I to part. Say goodbye. Adieu, kind friends, adieu. Yes, adieu. Oh, I can no longer stay with you. So hang my Torah on a weeping willow tree. And now and then please think of me.
Thank you, Jesse, and thank you, Arthur, for your parting gift. We will now hear from Arthur's 5 grandchildren.
Our granddad was a lot of things to a lot of people. He was a teacher, an activist, an author, an inspiration. To some, he was even a modern-day prophet. But to us, he was most often just our granddad. And we want to share a little bit about who he was to the 5 of us.
We remember feeling safe in his arms when we were small. He was a warm presence with a big beard and many colorful hats. He sang songs and told stories and whistled. We remember squeezing around his and Softa's chairs in the breakfast room so we could sit at the table with them. We remember the sound of his keyboard, typing away when he passed his office to go up to sleep on the 3rd floor, almost always, going again in the morning when he came downstairs. We always knew the best bet for finding him in the house was that office with its sparkly ceiling, countless books, pictures, and the desk where he was somehow always right.
We remember his eagerness to connect with us about meaningful moments in our lives. When I was 11, I got my first ever period during lunch at Granddad and Softy's. I panicked while my mom helped me find a pad around the house. She and Softa advised Granddad to steer clear of the topic, hoping to spare me any further embarrassment. But Granddad, characteristically so, approached me anyway. He said, "You're a woman now. There is so much to be excited about in this new chapter of womanhood." I stood there, completely mortified, afraid to stop talking. While maybe it was an unorthodox approach, looking back now, I'm so grateful. He was one of the first to tell me that this moment of womanhood was something to be proud of, something to embrace. He taught us all the importance of honoring life's moments with presence and intention.
We remember how much Granddad loved to learn Torah with and from us. Granddad told us a story of his imagining hippopotamus on Shabbat, soaking in a river, totally immersed, comfortable, and soothed. And as he said the bracha, la'asok b'divrei Torah, he would emphasize, la'asok. An image of total immersion in the words and teachings of Torah. He repeated the things he learned from us in speech and in writing, sometimes over and over and over again. Not always in the words we would have chosen, but always as an act of love.
we remember Granddad inculcating in us the value of making Jewish practices our own. Over the years, we gathered for many Shabbatot and Chagim at Granddad's in Southwest. Each time, we sang brachot together, each branch of the family singing their own version of the liturgy, often two, sometimes even three, all simultaneously. Inevitably, the words morphed into an absurd and beautiful jumble of Hebrew, reflecting how each of us felt comfortable and even excited to craft our own Jewish rituals, traditions, and practices.
We know that we've grown up in a world that has been shaped by his work. That would be true even if we weren't his grandchildren. But we also know that we have been able to live particularly unique Jewish lives because he was our granddad. We grew up in families that learned Torah together, made intentional choices about our practice together, and worked to build a better world together. Our familial inheritance is a Judaism rooted in justice, feminism, and egalitarianism. A Judaism that is deeply curious and creative, and a Judaism that can change and grow with us and who we become over time. We are so very lucky. We will miss him, and we know that so much of who he was and what he cared about lives on in us.
Thank you. We will now hear from Arthur's dear friend, Rabbi Jeffrey Digrum.
Over the years, those of us in the men's group with Arthur had a habit of working together in tough-minded ways with ourselves and with each other to try to be more of who we all wanted to be and who we each thought we should all be together. We were not always kind to each other. One of our most important pieces of the journey of the last 42, 43 years together was to learn to be less brutal with ourselves and with each other as we expressed what was always our love and our urging to be more of who we all wanted to be. In about 1983, Jeff Roth, Mordecai Liebling, Jerry Gorelick, Brian Walt, and I, along with Cy Sports, Bob Gluck, Michael Feinberg, and Sasan Suger, formed a men's group. After not too many years, 4 of them exited, and Jerry, who had maintained and has maintained contact with us over the years individually and as a group, moved off to Harrisburg. For a bunch of years, we met sporadically, talking on the phone, meeting at simchas and funerals, and occasional other events, demonstrations, and the like. And we found a way to maintain our contact and deepen the same conversations that we had over and over and over again with each other, sometimes circling around each one of us. Arthur was one of us. In the men's group, he was our older brother, but he was our brother. And he treated us as his brothers. We were his younger brothers. But he didn't treat us as younger brothers, even though we treated him as our older brother. When COVID swept over us, Zoom enabled Jerry to come back. And so we were renewed as a larger group of 6 again.
recall now at which celebration of Arthur's birthday I spoke to the gathered group at that time. Maybe it was the 80th, maybe it was the 85th, I don't remember which one it was. 83, please. I was asked to speak about the men's group, and I did at that time. That was a dozen years ago. The truth is, the men's group had become an institution in our lives, but Phyllis, I think it was you who really first made me aware of it, because you talked about it as the men's group. And with your intonation and tone, you made me, and I think all of us, realize that it was more than any one of us, more than all five of us. It was the group of us together. And it helped us move through our lives as we formed relationships with spouses and partners, had children and grandchildren, underwent separations and divorces, experienced triumphs and failures at our work, examined our relationships with each other, our life stages, our evolving political identities, and our growth and transformation as men, as friends, as Jews. Significantly, we developed an ethic of holding our own and each other's feet to the fire to illuminate our own and each other's acts with the light of truth. Nahorad Emet. Often that caused inner conflict and struggle among us. We had many life experiences that were turned into liturgical moments. We experienced and shared the deaths of our parents and also that of Howard, Arthur's brother. Mordecai's sweet and beloved dad died in October of 1988, and I believe it was at his funeral that we pledged to each other to bury one another. To lovingly put each other in the ground until only one of us would be left. Today, as we celebrate Arthur's life and mourn him, this is for us the beginning of the fulfillment of that promise. Perhaps it was because Arthur was the oldest of us that he never really showed much interest in that pledge of ours. In my memory, he never really talked much about it, except he joined in some when we talked about it as a group. More significantly, in recent years, and especially in the last period as he weakened, Arthur ignored our urging to discuss our future deaths. Especially over these last months, Arthur made it clear he was just too busy to pay attention to his father. We talked about our feelings about our aging, all of us, our feelings of our declining and weakening bodies, our feelings about death, our senses of the importance of coming to terms with our own future processes of dying and our ultimate deaths. Arthur really wasn't into it. Arthur did have something he wanted to talk about, always. He always wanted to talk about something. He talked in great length. But as we got stronger together and more vulnerable and sweeter, Arthur himself, unquestionably, got to be sweeter and more vulnerable as a person, and became really, I think, in many ways, the sweetest and most vulnerable of all of us, in the way that he talked with us, acted with us, and listened